Oh, and welcome back, everyone, to OCS. Before we get started, a special thanks to our audience, the OCS family. As always, we miss you, we love you, we thank you so much for your subscriptions. If you're ready to subscribe, if you haven't already, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. Your support means the world to us, and it helps keep the show going strong. Special hug and thank you to our sponsors, Battleboard Studios and Baron of Dice. Special thanks to our family sponsor, Art of War. Be sure to go check them out on YouTube for exciting content. Their strategies and insights are always invaluable for anyone looking to up their game. Uh, Also, don't forget to check out the new OCS training episode 11 in 2 weeks. And we are doing a special one, a continuation on this episode where it's going to be a traveler's guide. And we're going to expand on how to basically create your list, what units, how to basically put everything together for your events, your tournaments that you're going to enjoy yourself and something to listen to, right? When you're taking that long drive to those events. Usually, I know myself, I'm either driving around an hour to 2 hours to go to 40K events in my local area. If I'm not doing them myself, right? Then yeah, so go ahead and make sure to stay tuned to the next episode and check that out. Over here, I'm fumbling a little bit, I guess. Maybe I need some water or something like that. Also, make sure to check out the new Ops channel that we have. It is new content. Basically, we do interviews, debriefings, all kinds of new content, right? We start talking about potentially Pariah Nexus that's coming out in on the 22nd. So make sure to go check that out as well. Exclusive content on all kinds of codices where we talk about in the future, it's going to be Demons and Death Guard and Eldari. So check that out as well. Make sure to like and share those. We got some exciting previews and special guests lined up as always, and you don't want to miss out. Today we have something special from Onslaught Gaming from us, right? We've been working on some exclusive content and surprises just for you. Stay tuned as we dive into today's episode and reveal what we have in store. Don't forget to watch the new Op Show, like I was telling you. And that's it for now. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned to our latest episodes and special content. Until then, keep gaming and stay awesome, OCS family. And what's up, Matt from Almost Functional? How you doing, brother? How's everything going?
I'm doing good. How are you? My day was all right.
Everything's good, man. Everything's good. And make sure I'm going to put a link below as well, a banner kind of scrolling through as well, to go check out Almost Functional. Big proponent, big supporter of the show. Love this man for always doing everything that he does and for all of his own personal content as well. And if you want to go check out as well some orc information, how I did with orcs, go check out that content. He has it on his platform where I talk about an RTT, how I came in first place, and we break that down together every single round and matchups and things like that. So make sure to support him.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to dive in immediately into today's content. So to get started off, as usual, we're going to pay the bills a little bit later, right? But I'm going to add some information, a PDF here to kind of break down exactly what we're doing today and help you get better at signing up for all of these tournaments that we love to go to and play in, right? Specifically BCP, how to register for BCP, how to find events, how to make it nice and seamless for everyone, right? So just to get started off, we have the introduction for OCS Training Episode 10, right? OCS Episode 10, how to register for BCP. So on your phone, right, on any mobile application, either you're going to use, and I'm going to be more specific on this on the video as well, but you can do this for your Apple phone or your Android phone. you can go either to the Play Store or the Apple Store, download Best Coast Pairings player, and you'll be able to get all that information, all the tournament information from there. Make sure to sign up, put in your email, and remember that email that you're going to use is going to be the same email that you're going to use for every single one of your events you register for, right? So download that on Android or App Store, select the event that you're interested in, and follow the registration process. Sometimes it might involve having to pay an entry fee if applicable, right? Um, Most of the times, you usually don't. Um, if you do have to pay a fee, just make sure that you're guaranteed to go to that event. Just a little bit of inside tips, right? Make sure you're going to be able to go. A lot of people get busy in life. We know we all have families, we have obligations and things like that. So, but here goes the video, and then we'll continue on to the PDF here shortly. And we're going to break down exactly what it is to register on BCP. Hey, how's everyone doing today? And welcome to Onslaught Gaming 40K, OCS Episode 10. And today, I'm going to show you how to register and find an event on Best Coast Pairings. If you're on PC or laptop, please type in bestcoastpairings.com. Or if you prefer mobile, you can always download for your iOS on the Apple Store. Or if you have an Android system, please download on Google Play. Then we're going to go ahead and click on Find Event. Under Find Event, you'll see an events listing. Location can be either online or any location. For today's purposes, it's going to be any location because we want to be there physically. There is a start date, end date, and you can manipulate those dates, put the parameters in that you need. But for today's purposes, we are going to use it for Crucible, which is September 6th through the 8th, by clicking the end date. A drop-down window will appear. We're going to go ahead and put September 9th, as I like to put it a couple of days after the event, just to make sure to populate everything that's going on that weekend. Then please select the game system. You're going to see an option for game system. Now there's a plethora of different game systems available for you to select, but for today, we're going to select Warhammer 40K. Also a section for event name. Optional, you don't have to actually put this. Also the number of rounds, just in case you only want to do a limited amount of rounds or GTs or majors. For the event name, we're going to go ahead and put Crucible, as we're looking for a particular event that we want to attend and register to. Once you've clicked search or enter, you'll actually find the events that you're looking for. Now they have two wonderful events. One ran by Tim for the narrative, and the second one ran by myself, the major. Now you'll see some information for the city, state, and country, who the tournament organizer is, how many participants are actually signed up out of the maximum allowed, and how many rounds the event might be. Also, if the event has started or not. We're going to go ahead and click the event itself. After you've clicked the event, it'll take you into the BCP page for that event itself. And you'll see several tabs here: Overview, Roster, Pairings, and Placings, and Organize. We're going to go ahead and press the roster just so we can see who's attending the event, how many people might actually be registered, and see if any of my friends are going. After the first battle round, you'll be able to see pairings. After the first battle round has completed, you'll be able to see placings. We'll go ahead and check overview once again. In the overview section, you'll see that it'll tell you the genre, game system, the name of the event, when the event starts, the location. Now this is hyperlinked, so you can always press it and it'll take you directly to like a Google's Maps or whatever your preferred one is, and you can find your directions there. The event owners, tournament organizer, tickets remaining, and the event details. Now, it's pertinent to remember the event details gives you everything you need to play in that event. Always remember to read your player packets. All that information in there needs to be adhered to and would behoove you in most situations to not get a yellow card or 10-point deduction. Now, let's try to register for this event. Under register for this event, you'll see the player registration. You'll need to type in your first name, type in your last name, type in a club if you have one available. You don't have to, it's optional. And most importantly, use the player email that you use to register for Best Coast Pairings. Type it in here, click the little box, last thing, click register. That's it. It's really that simple. There's nothing else to it. I hope that this video today has helped you all. Yeah. All right. So we're back. So hopefully that video did assist everyone in understanding exactly how to register on Best Coast Pairings. Best Coast Pairings is an amazing application, has an amazing team of support. They're always around if you've ever been to a Games Workshop open event. They're there in-house helping out to facilitate the actual event itself. They have a wonderful customer service system. Basically, you get in contact with them and they're ready to rectify any issues that you might have if you're a tournament organizer yourself. I know they've helped me out immensely. So shout out to Best Coast Pairings, BCP, Paul McKelvey, individuals like that. Love you guys very much. Thank you for everything you guys do. For what I've heard, not to get too completely personal, but they do this all in their own time, right? Other than the donations that they get and funding that they get to open up. Basically, if you pay, I think it's still $50, right, Matt? On an annual basis, but it's $50 on an annual basis, and basically you can see any event, you can see any army list and things like that. So, for example, DreamHack put on by the wonderful JD over the weekend, you could see that event army listings today, right after it's already happened, or during the time you're watching it, and say, "Oh, okay, like I want to see what that army list is all about." See if I can build something similar, especially if they won, right? So you can stay in tune with everything going on. And I believe it is $50, right?
I do like monthly. I think it's like $5-6 a month. I'm sure they might have a yearly price, but
they have a monthly one too.
Yep.
Okay. Nice. So yeah, for those of you who can't do annually, just do it monthly. No, absolutely, Maxwell. And I'm glad that we can help you out, right? We're going to give you a bunch of tips today. And like I said, on the next OCS episode 11, it's going to be a traveler's guide. And basically, it's going to give you a lot more information on how to build your list, how to prepare for tournaments and things like that. We're going to go in deep dive exactly to all of the details. So make sure to stay tuned and watch that. As always, thank you very much, Max. And don't forget, Max, I know I've forgotten to message you. I know you've been a long-time supporter of the show. So make sure to watch out for email or a message from me. And I'll let you know exactly what you want in a prize. I don't know if you saw that in the comments or not that I sent you a couple of days ago. But I'm going to make sure to get in contact with you either today or by tomorrow. And I have something special to send you. Supported by and sponsored by Baron of Dice. So you got anything to add on to that, Matt?
No, not really. That's pretty much explains how to sign up for events. It's really pretty simple once you've done it once or twice with the app.
It is. And also, I just wanted to clarify too. This was on browser, right? Because me and Matt were talking about this in the back end. The application on your mobile device works great as well. Obviously, the interface is a lot different, but you can look up events on there as well. I know that they had some changes that they had where on browser wasn't working, or I'm sorry, on your mobile app it wasn't working. You had to go to browser. I did that on browser just to kind of show everyone the full picture of what's going on. But you can do that on your mobile app as well. You do not have to put in a particular event, you could just put in a timeline, like I was stating in there, right? So you could state like, "Hey, I want to go to an event. Like I have a GT called Rubicon 2 GT this weekend in Kissimmee, Florida, with the wonderful Tim Wright, right? So if I wanted to check out exactly what was happening at Rubicon 2 GT, I can state, "Hey, on June 7th through June 9th, right? What are the events going on for that weekend?" Plug in the information, plug in those dates, and you'll see every single event that's going around the world entirely. I've seen things pop up from England, uh, all kinds of places, right? And it usually shows a wide range of different type of events.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of good information. So kind of moving on to the next slide. How to make an army list. So first things first, right? Obviously, something very simple to everyone. If you're brand new into 40K, you obviously want to make a standard size list of 2,000 points. All right. This is called a standard format for 40K itself. You obviously don't want to have any more than 3 the same data sheets, right? So unless it specifically allows you to, I mean, you can have more than, sometimes you can have more than 3 of the same models, right? Well, but like Keeper Secrets, things like that. You can have 3 of those. They cannot be grouped into more than a unit of 1. So you can only have 3 of those in your list, and then you can have a Shalaxi on the side as your 4th Keeper Secret. But because she is a character, an epic hero, she can only be used once in your entire army list for 2,000 points.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But that's kind of a way to kind of circumvent the way of how you can get more than that type of data sheet, right? Also, no more than 6 battle line and dedicated transports. Don't forget that your dedicated transports, once you start the game, has to be filled with something in it. So you have to have a unit in it unless explicitly detailed otherwise, right? So you could have 6 Gray Hunters, right, from Space Wolves, since they're battle line, or our Blood Claws battle line now too, brother.
Yes.
All right, so 6 Blood Claws, right, and then you could have 6 Rhinos, or 6 Rhinos, and then put up to 12 models, I think, or 11 models into them.
Actually, I think it might be 10.
Is it really 10 only now?
Adam, I haven't run a Rhino in a while. I know some of them are limited to how many models you can put in because it affects putting characters and stuff in there. But
Yep. Okay. All right.
I know at one point it was 12. At one point it was 10. I'm not 100% sure what the current capacity is for Rhino. I haven't run one in a while.
Well, for orcs, like I know orcs, right?
Yep.
Orcs trucks can have 12 models in there.
Yep.
So I can put, 10 boys, 10 knobs, or 10 infantry models,
Mm-hmm.
and 2 characters, right? So I can put 10 boys, which they can have 2 characters attached to them. One of them has to be a war boss, and then I can put a pain boy in there. So I can put 12 models inside of a truck,
Yep.
right? So that's a good example of one. Also, make sure that you don't have more than 3 enhancements in your army for Strike Force. So it's 2,000 points, and it's called Strike Force, right? Which is the standardized most of the time. It's usually the standard for most tournaments, right? And those 3 enhancements cannot go on the same character. They can never go on an epic hero either, right? I don't think there's any stipulations or any conditions where an epic hero could ever take an enhancement. They usually already have their own enhancements built into their data sheets, or their own war gear and things like that. So that is not allowed on a regular basis. Also,
Max is saying it is 12 models for a Rhino currently.
That's what I figured. I knew they kind of bumped it up, things like that. So you could probably put that's a Wolf Lord and a lieutenant attached to a 10-man squad of Gray Hunters or something like that, right?
Yep.
So there you go. Also, make sure, this is very important, right? Like I've done this myself, Thank goodness that the tournament organizer didn't lock the list at midnight of, because it's usually when you submit your list, right? Most of the time, people will tell you to submit it either before 10 p.m., 2200 hours, or midnight, right? And make sure you check your war gear. Also, if and you should be using the Games Workshop application, right? I've even noticed the other day that knobs are overpriced in Battlescribe by 10 points, right? So if you're using Battlescribe as an army list builder, right? Make sure that you're double checking all of your prices, your war gear, things like that. I know I get into the habit of remembering the points and things, so I always try to double check. Sometimes it slips my mind, but especially war gear, right? Um, Specifically, I went to an event. I forgot to take bomb squigs on my squig hogs, right? And while I'm at the event, I'm like, I forgot to check the little box of war gear that says you can add 2 bomb squigs to your 8-man squig hog unit. And I lost out on that opportunity of having additional war gear that does mortar wounds, right? For those of you who don't know what bomb squigs do, basically you just select a target within 12 inches. On a 2-up, you do D3 mortar wounds, right? That's pretty big, right? Especially that you don't need line of sight. That bomb squig can literally go through walls and all kinds of things, so it breaks a lot of the rules of the game. So make sure that you're always double checking your war gear, making sure that you're taking everything that you want to take on that unit, right? Sometimes you don't. For example, on my trucks for orcs, I don't usually take wrecking balls. The reason I don't take a wrecking ball is because it creates a extra dynamic piece that can be fired upon on a tournament, right? So I don't put it on there, and I obviously don't model it with it as well, right? You never want to model for advantage. You never want to have something on there that isn't actually on there, or vice versa.
Yeah. And it's one thing if you're doing practice games or going to like a small local RTT, but if you're going to like a GT or a major, try to make sure your models actually have the correct warrior on them. Your opponent should be able to look at your army and see, oh, they have missile launchers, and you're not like, oh, well, technically they're Meltas in my list. Like your opponent should be able to look at your models and know what you're about to attack them with. They shouldn't have to try to remember what you're proxying.
Exactly. Thank you for that, Matt. And also make sure to copy and paste from the GW application. I'm always going to put out, and I'm always going to shout out GW, the application itself. I think it's better. Obviously, if the GW application is faulty or incorrect, which I have never seen it to be the case, right? Knock on wood, right?
I think there's a few times early when it first dropped, but since then, yeah, I think they've been fairly good about keeping it.
I think so as well. Like I was pointing out, right, on Battlescribe, I was literally looking at a list online and someone was sharing the orc list.
Yeah. On Battlescribe, it's if you know any kind of computer HTML, whatever, it's easy to mess with Battlescribe lists.
Yeah. But we don't want to promote that. We don't.
No, that's why I'm saying it's just because you look at someone's Battlescribe list doesn't mean it's the real stuff. GW is a little harder to
manipulate. Exactly. Yeah, and make sure to copy and paste from the GW application.
Yeah.
There's an extract roster in the top right when you're building your list on there, and it'll copy to your clipboard or whatever type of phone you might have, or and it'll make it nice and easy for you. Yeah, man.
And when you go into the BCP app, your events, if you've already, this will be after you register your events. Your events will show up. So you click on the event you want. You go over to your player details. You scroll all the way to the bottom where it says list information, and you paste it there and click add list, and it'll add your list to your to the tournament.
Yep, great thought. No, thank you for the insight. Yeah, it's something everyone should be listening to, right? So make sure you're doing the right thing at all times, right? Try not, don't manipulate Battlescribe, obviously, right? That can be manipulated. But don't do that, right? As a tournament organizer, I will catch you. I usually double check it either by recreating it myself or the application itself in Best Coast pairings if you do parse lists, which usually players can't see, but there's a parse list section, right? And it will give you either a red or yellow color to your check-in section, right? Um, in that section right there, if it's red or yellow, right, that means there's something potentially wrong with that list.
Yeah.
I know there used to be a lot of issues in the past with Battlescribe. A lot of them used to be yellow, but they used to be legal. But nowadays, a lot of the times, especially with the GW application, it's pretty spot on. So if I see something, that's usually a red flag to me to check out that list and make sure that I get everything fixed,
Well,
right?
especially if you're going to a larger event and you're trying to do well. If you're doing well with something, people are going to be looking at your list and scrutinizing it, so you're going to get caught. And if you're going
Yes.
somewhere not expecting to do well, then why are you cheating in the first place?
Yep. All right. Oh, look at this. We got Nick in here. Hardworking man. Bring him in. How you doing, Nick?
Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing?
Good. How
All
are
right,
you?
all right. Say hello to the peoples, Nick.
Hey, glad I could join in. How's everyone doing tonight?
They missed you. That's what it was. They missed you. They love you, man. They love you. Me and Matt been killing it. We've been killing it.
Yeah, brother.
Breaking down. We've been breaking down everything for the people, letting them know exactly how to register for BCP. We're kind of on page. We're on page 3 right now, so we're just finishing this up, talking about copy and pasting from the GW application and submitting on Best Coast pairings. So, on to the next page. So, page 4. Make sure to read the event details, right? Like, this is a very important one, as I detailed on the video, right? There's usually player packets. If you want to call it a player packet in the definition of packet, what I do for my events, like the GT coming up this weekend, or Crucible, which is a big convention, 124 participant major, right? I did a player packet for that one, but there's usually a player guide that I'll do in the description sections and Best Coast pairings, right? Which is equivalent to a player packet. It's just not a packet in the sense of the definition, right? But it usually gives you all the information right there, like I'm telling you, right in the player details under the overview.
And it's technically it's event details, not player details. Player details will be your army list and your army. Under overview, it'll be under event details where you're going to find all this.
There you go. There you go. So you'll find it in there under the event details itself, right? And make sure to go check that out. Adhere to all of the rules on there. Obviously, if you have any questions for the tournament organizer, there's a section in there as well that you can email your tournament organizer through Best Coast Pairings, right? So it makes life very, very easy for you. In the event details section, you'll find all the rules needed to play at that event. And this is event specific. So like Matt was kind of talking about before, right? With war gear and things like that, there's a thing called what you see is what you get. It's called WYSIWYG, right? Make sure that everything is proper on there, right? And these can be specific to certain events, right? Some people are more lenient. Some tournament organizers might say, hey, you can have whatever on there. You can have a Hasbro toy as your Demon Prince or something like that. If that's allowed at those events. Usually it's not. So make sure to adhere to those rules. Read all the details in the event details section.
Yep. And any major proxies or stand-ins get approved by your TO before you show up, because it just feel bad if you show up and then you don't get to play with a full 2,000 point army because you brought stuff that isn't allowed.
And base sizes is a big one too. I know that there's certain armies have like confusion about base sizes, so always check with the TO, I think.
Very important. Yes. No, absolutely. And that's part of being WYSIWYG, right? What you see is what you get, and making sure that everything is accurate in your army. I know a lot of people when, like for instance, and I'm going to keep on harping on orcs, right? Whatever I'm playing currently, it was World Eaters before, now it's orcs. But orcs went up from like 28.5 millimeter bases, went up to 32 millimeter, right? A lot of people were griping, complaining about things like that. Remember, we're all playing this game for a reason, to have fun, but also in order to have fun, we want to make it balanced and equivalent for everybody else, right? So we want to make this an equal experience. It's not only for your pleasure, right, and for your fun, it's for your opponent as well. So make sure that all of your stuff is always accurate as best as you can. Once again, like Nick said, right, and Matt said, get in contact with your tournament organizer if you don't know, if you feel like you're off, or go to the Games Workshop website for that exact model, right, in the box set, and it usually tells you right on there. 9 times out of 10, it tells you right on there the base sizes.
Yep.
Make sure to read the packet, as it has all kinds of information, even some to help you with your opponent's army in details, right? So, just, we're going to reiterate it. Just continue to read it, right? Make sure you're understanding everything. Sometimes those event details, player guidelines, or player packets are very long, but it has a lot of pertinent information that's going to help you out through that event. And like Matt said previously, right? You don't want to get yellow carded or an infraction throughout the event just because you skipped over or you skimmed over the information on there, right? I think it's one of the most important things. Obviously, I can be very biased as a tournament organizer, and creating the information. I spent a lot of I spent a lot of time and a lot of hard work creating those player packets or player details. So I would love for everyone to read it, right? Also, right, a lot of people don't understand that there's a lot of pertinent information in there as well, right? I put in information in there to even help you out as a gamer, where you don't have to have the GW application. If you ever go to an Onslaught event or ever a Rubicon event or Crucible itself, you'll see that I'll add into the player packet some free resources, right? And some links to free resources. Everything doesn't have to be paid for. Like, if I understand it and I know it, I'll share it with the community, right? This is all about building a healthier community. OCS has always stood on educating the community with the best and the finest information. Just in case you don't know, right, 39K is a wonderful, I think it's just a browser, right, Nick or Matt? I think Nick knows about 39K. But 39K,
it's a web app, I think.
Yeah,
Website.
it's just a website, right? So it's not an application, but it's a wonderful tool, right, to help you out, basically understand other armies, right? So if you don't have the money, the resources, like myself as a tournament organizer, because I get, I have all the codexes, I get that given to me. So I can obviously see all of the information from codices and new things that are coming out, right? But 39K helps you out with that, right? It gives you all the information, detachment, and things like that. So, You guys want to expand on that?
Yeah, so the event details can really, if you want to go to the next level from just showing up and having fun to actually trying to do well, you can find a lot of information in event details, like terrain type, player place, WTC, GW. And if it's GW, a lot of times they'll tell you which layouts. They might tell you which missions. And if you know what mission and what layouts you're using, like, you can actually tailor your list to do better on that than just showing up with something generic, as if you had no clue what any of that stuff was going to be.
Correct.
That is, I mean, that's a way to approach it. But yeah, that I think definitely reading the event details is super important, because you've got the aspect of terrain. You want to familiarize yourself with the terrain format, and then obviously knowing what rules, I guess, like what rules are in effect, because there's been frequent updates to the game now, and a lot of times the different TOs and different metas will. I've actually seen some, not in Florida, but some TOs have allowed legends, which is an interesting thing. So there's kind of different maybe different standards for competitive play, like depending on if you're if you're attending like an RTT or a GT, it's like, well, what codexes are legal? Is my Tau codex street legal? Are we using the new data slate? Are we using the new points? Are we allowing the new Dark Angel codex? For these are all like recent examples. So it's important to familiarize yourself with all of this upfront. Before you don't want to do this. Never want to do this day of the event. You want to have time to paint your models, prepare your army, and check your rules. Check your rules. Read through your rules beforehand. And I guess the two main resources I recommend for that would be the GW app itself is really good. It's got the little, what do they call it? That little button on top that they added.
Yep.
I think it's called the
export rosters. You're talking about? Or you're talking about
command bunker. The command bunker.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Awesome.
Yeah, so they added it. If you guys don't know about this, you can go in there, and I believe you can make a list for free.
Yep.
If you buy the codex, you can put the code in. Is basically how the GW app works. And then once you select your list, you hit command bunker, and then it jams all the rules and the data sheets all together, stratagems, everything, all in the one little sheet. And if you're on a computer, you can kind of find the same sort of thing, not as good, but on 39K 39k.pro is the website for that. So those are like two really good resources for familiarizing yourself with the rules, and then also checking other people's rules. For example, if you're really worried about, let's say you're worried about playing guard, or your friend plays guard all the time, you can go on and spend some time, check that, familiarize yourself with how their stats are, how their rules work, and stuff like that. So,
yeah. And also you want to keep track of how much time they're giving you for rounds. 2.5 versus 3 hours can make a huge difference in how fast you need to make your decisions and play your game.
Absolutely. We're going to get to that in the next couple pages. Yes. No, absolutely. But no, that's a great point you bring up, right? Great point that you bring up. There's a lot of information, specifically like Matt was saying, right? The different formats. It can be GW. It can be the new Frontline Gaming stuff that's coming out. It can be WTC, right? Make sure you understand exactly what you're getting into. Also, right? And I'll kind of continue on with Matt was saying about the formats, is that it also creates a different meta, and it creates different list building as well, right? You might get more into a shootier meta, depending like player place. Like some places might still be running player plays. Me and Matt were talking about that before the show. I didn't know people were still doing that. I thought a lot of people were going to start transitioning into the new stuff. But if you're still playing player plays, right, that might have more shooty angles and abilities to put more shooty armies and do better with shooty armies, right? WTC, that stuff is so dense. Everyone knows, like, you bring a close combat army, you're probably going to do pretty well on WTC. And GW, I always like to say, me and Nick has talked about this before, GW is kind of in between, right? It's kind of good for both, right? So I think it's a happy medium for the both. And whatever you play, none of them are bad, right? We're not shooting shots or any of them. But I think all of them are amazing. I think you just have to remember that when you go in there, be cognizant of that and then create your list based on that, right? Like I was telling a tournament organizer over the weekend, and me and Nick went to a tournament, had a great time. I think Justin's in the chats. Yeah, Justin's in the chats as well, talking about it, who actually took first place. And I was telling the people there, I was telling the guys there, I was like, hey man, like the missions are a particular way, so you can tech into the missions as well, right? So, and build particular lists around that. So
back in like 5th edition, Dark Side was one of the big spots to go for tournaments down in Sarasota.
Yeah, when Yuri used to do that. And Yuri just sent me a friend's request the other day too, man. Awesome guy.
Well, even before Yuri, Brian had people in there running. Brian was running events down there for a long time. Like Kurt and I used to go with Josh. We'd have 4 tournaments each weekend. Had one. We'd have Anthem games. We'd go out to Coliseum. We'd go down to Dark Side, and we'd go to what's the one in Tampa? Armada. Like those are
Yeah.
the only 4 tournaments, and they had it spaced out. So every weekend we had a different tournament to go to.
Yep, I love it. Yeah, no, I love it. I know we've had our little fun in the sun as well. Me and you and David.
Yeah.
We go to different events and stuff like that. So yeah, and make sure to stay tuned next week, in 2 weeks, sorry, rather, for the players guide. So you can listen to us talk about what we've done before, right? How we've went to events with buddies, loaded up in the cars and shared gas money and things like that, right? Uh, so it gets real fun, especially when you start going out to like an ATC. I know Nick is going out to ATC, stuff like that. Um,
Good
so
times.
yeah, so get prepared for all of those great times with your friends, right? And this is what we do it for. I'm gonna go ahead and pay the bills real quick before the lights get shut off. So give us 1 minute, exactly 1 minute. We're gonna run a quick commercial, and we'll be right back. Now, with a word from our sponsor, Baron of Dice. Baron of Dice is your one stop shop for premium wargaming dice. Our dice are made with premium resin materials and colored dyes. Each die is hand mixed to the desired result and then carefully swirled with 2, 3, or 4 colors in a silicone mold before being laser engraved with a wicked symbol and finished in a matte or gloss polish. There are no imperfections in our dice, no balancing issues, no micro bubbles or mold lines. This is the difference between. You can, quite literally, feel and hear a difference with our dice. Whatever game you play, whatever style your team or faction rocks, we're sure to have something to elevate your game. With over 500 styles and over 4,000 customer reviews, welcome to the best dice on the planet. Now back to our show. All right. Sorry about that. I had to go check on something real quick and go to the latrine. But thank you to everyone for watching that. Go ahead and support as always. Yeah, go ahead and start off, Nick, if you want to talk about playing the game and not allowing the game to play you.
All right, so looking kind of just covering the basics for some of this stuff. Um, I think a big takeaway here is you don't really want to overthink it. So starting off, um, you want to come into the event if possible with a plan of how you're gonna physically set up your army, right? Because I mean, at the end of the day, Warhammer is a tabletop game. It's a physical game, and like your models, if you put this list together and it's got you know 280 gaunts or something, you might have a real severe physical problem at like transporting around, setting it up on the table, and actually playing the game. So this is all stuff you have to plan beforehand. Uh, so how, like, are you going to deploy this on the line? Are you going to hide? Are you going to hide this unit? Are you going to have this guy in deep strike? Are you going to have this guy in a transport? A lot of this stuff you don't want to have to account for this on the fly. You just want to, because basically the timer starts and you just want to get things moving. Um, so the 40K has the deployment where has an alternating deployment, right? So the number of drops you have might matter. If you have 10, 15, 20 drops, usually it might be the most that you see. Um, so it often doesn't matter. For example, having your unit of shadow specters deployed somewhere to try to maybe get turn one shots on a rhino or something like that. If you're trying to set up all these plays before the game even starts, a lot of times it doesn't matter. Um, there's two main reasons for that. A few small subset of armies in the game that can advance and charge to turn one charge you if they go first, world leaders, but most of them can't. Majority, I would say 90% of them can't, 95 maybe. The other thing is, as far as being shot, this is army agnostic. As long as you deploy your stuff behind the terrain, you can't be shot. Um, once again, that's applicable to about 99% of armies. There is a couple things that can do that. There's like you can have a 32-inch Magnus fly over and shoot you, uh, if they want to. Probably will never see that happen, but generally this is just core. I would say core 40K knowledge. Deploy safely, have a plan for deployment, Stick to your consistent plan and have a precognition, have a plan going into it.
Yeah, and if you know what terrain and possibly what missions, I would advise practicing deploying at home or at your local store before deploy for certain matchups. Like, all right, I think they're shooty, deploy defensive. They're more combat. Just practice deploying in how you go so you don't block your own units in from getting to the places they want to be your first turn.
That's right.
Yeah, that's called the parking lot. That's another big thing you want to avoid. It's actually, to me, it's terrifying. One of the worst. So in this edition, they actually cleaned up these movement rules,
Mm-hmm.
but you really want to avoid if you're someone who so it affects vehicles and monsters, right? If you're going to be playing, guard, maybe space marines, maybe Tyranids like that, they have lots of monsters. Demons is another one. Especially for things that don't have flying, like guard tanks, chimeras, Lehman Russ, stuff like that. You really want to have your stuff set up in a way where you can avoid the parking lot, because I've seen it happen before, especially it happens to newer players, and it can be a very quick way to lose the game. Because
Yeah.
if you can't move out to move on objectives, you're just giving your opponent free points. Your army will sit back. It can't affect the game. It can't score you points, and then you'll lose even quicker, regardless of how much damage you're dealing.
Yeah, because I've seen people do it without even thinking. You put one unit in front, and then you have a unit that moves faster, so you'll put it behind it. You just think, oh, they're faster, they'll get places. But by the time you move the other unit, a lot of times they're both trying to sit in the same spot, and so you have to choose which one kind of gets left behind.
Exactly, yeah, and I would say the core takeaway here is, like, you want to be able to play your game, and don't focus so much on what your opponent's doing or what they might do or what they could do, because a lot of times, as long as you have your game plan in a good place, then it won't matter. It will matter very, very little what they're doing.
Yep. Again, try to be decisive in your decisions, because you sit there for 5-10 minutes, think about something. Most of the time, your first thought normally probably was the best idea anyway.
Yeah, go with your gut instincts. Yes. Yep. Go with your gut
Because
instincts.
if you're that unsure of what's happening, then you're still going to be that unsure after you sit there for 5 minutes. So just do what you think and learn from it if you're that unsure of what happens in certain situations.
And it can be difficult. It can be difficult with the learning curve for a newer player, and it especially feels bad if you play a list and let's say you hypothetically set up your whole army on the line, and then your opponent's playing Tau and you lose a lot of models on the top of one. It can feel really bad. Keep in mind the train, even with the GW format, the train doesn't always permit you to hide your whole army. If you have too many vehicles, too many big stuff, big units, your footprint can be too large. The term used for it is footprint. A way to avoid this, there's actually 3 ways to have a smaller footprint. Strategic reserve is free. You can hold stuff in deep strike, and then you can have units inside of transports, which reduces your footprint as well. So those are the 3
free but limited. 1,000 points for reserves. So,
yeah.
And no more than half of your units. So.
Right. So yeah, you can't hold your whole army in deep strike, even though it would be funny in 5th edition. I think you can do that, but not anymore.
In strategic reserves is only 500 points, correct? Yes.
I think so. Yeah, it's
500 points.
Yeah, and don't be scared to lose a game as long as you learn something while you're doing it, especially if you're a newer player. Like, you're not going to just come in and just start wrecking RTTs right away. Like, as long as you learn something from it, don't always take losses as a bad thing.
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, unless you're me, you're just naturally good at Warhammer 40K. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. I'm horrible at this game.
Lewis is almost functional at 40K.
Exactly. I think we have the wrong company names tied in, to the wrong people. I'm more of an almost functional type of person.
No, we both are. That's the problem.
Okay, me lesser than you most times.
We can't all be Nick and know exactly what we're doing all the time.
Exactly.
No, not all the time.
I'm Eminem, man. I always like to put myself down. But anyways,
Yeah.
go ahead, Nick. Continue on. Continue on. Where you at, brother?
All right, so yeah, looking at number 3, I think we already talked about 1 and 2 basically. Number 3, play the game objectives and primary let the army play itself. Um, if you play to smash, you'll lose sight of the goal. I mean, yeah. So you want to think about points. Like what this means is because like the way you actually win this game is just points. You know, it's like oh man, I killed. You could be like, oh, what a great game. You know, I killed 120 orcs. Like I definitely won this game. Well, no, because if the orcs just charged you every turn and ran over the primary objectives, and you didn't even put a single space marine on there, you're just gonna get blown out in points regardless of how much damage you actually did. So yeah, just the key thing with number 3 here is just think about your primaries, think about your secondaries. Um, Something I recommend to do is like when you're drawing your secondary cards, your tacticals, you want to think right away, how do I do this? Is this even possible? And then tell your opponent how you're going to do it as well, because it's your turn, right? So generally, like it's totally open information. There's no like there's no tricks. Like if you can score investigate signal or capture outpost, try to set it up earlier rather than later, because you got to tell your opponent, say I'm gonna try to score this capture outpost, and let's see how it goes. And there's a certain like a risk assessment involved in it. So that's kind of more of a thing involving secondaries. But think about the points. Be cognizant of the points and the I guess the differential in points, right? Because it's another thing is like you have to consider if you don't walk in the objectives and then your opponent swarms all over the objectives, how do you get yourself out of that hole? Is it even possible to win if you let that happen for 1 turn? Is it possible to win? Probably. If you let that happen for 2 turns, is it possible to win? Probably not. So that's something you like really have to consider as far as when the scoring really starts on about around 2.
Yep. And I know
And
there's something. Oh, go ahead, Lewis.
no, I was just gonna say, and Matt and Nick, how many times have we seen it? I've never been a part of it, but how many times have we heard or seen somebody get tabled and still win the game?
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely happens. It happens a lot. Drukari, fast armies.
Well, I've seen it plenty of times
leaders.
too, where someone's kind of down and complaining early in a game and ends up winning because things swing the last couple turns. So just because things aren't going well, no, I'm not. I wasn't specific. David does it a lot too. I wasn't specifically referring to that one thing. I knew you'd say that, but no, I wasn't specifically referring to that. But I've done it. I've seen it done to me multiple times. Like turn 1 or 2, your dice are bad. Things like you just like, oh, I lost this. You get kind of, and then you end up winning the game. Like
I know. Yeah, he does it a lot. He does it a lot.
but also, like Nick was talking about having a plan for what you're doing. That we'll go into that more in depth on number 11. But that also goes back to your army building. Each thing you put in your list, you should have an idea of what it's supposed to be doing during the game. So make sure it's doing the things you brought it for.
Yes. Thank you. That's a great point you bring up, Matt. Right. And like you said, we're going to expand on that later on too. But yes, every unit should have a role. Matt talks about this all the time. And Matt, when I first started playing competitively, I always give Matt kudos. Right. He would select. First of all, his deployment was the tightest deployment I've ever seen. His screening and positioning on his deployments. Right.
Thank you, David.
So it trickles down back to David as always, dude, right?
No, my deployment to stop deep strikes goes back to when he was running Grey Knights and drop guard back when you could put your whole army in reserve. He dropped in with like all the special weapon guardsmen and great. Like if you left him holes, you lost turn 1. Like no,
yes,
no. So that all came from playing David so much.
Yeah, the turn 1 deep strike, and they still have that. The first to the fray.
Yeah, but you could do it with 2,000 points back in the day. Like you'd start with nothing on the table and drop everything on one side of the table and just no.
Yeah, Space Wolves with all the drop pods. I mean, you could still do it with drop pods, but yeah, back then you could do like all those drop pods back in the days because he literally had a whole whatever it was called. Was it called a detachment back then, or was it called a battle formation or something like that?
I don't know. It's gone through so many different versions. But yeah, I think this was like 7th edition.
It was 7th edition, yeah, where Ragnar can put his entire army all in drop pods.
The Black Mains.
which was completely hilarious. It was like, all right, nothing's on the whole table. Turn one at all. It's like, what type of interaction do we have going on here? Anyways, the good old times, right? The good old days, man, where things were very broken, not supported, things like that, man. Shout out to Games Workshop for being a lot better nowadays, right? Being a lot better. And can't wait for Pariah Nexus. That's going to be exciting. I know Nick and Matt are excited about that. Pariah Nexus, that's going to be fun, man. That's going to rejuvenate a lot of us as competitive players, right? To get back into the system and just have fun time.
And we got the word from ATC now. So ATC is huge this year. So it's in Chattanooga, Tennessee, July 12th. Runs all weekend. They have like 8-man and a 5-man now. So they expanded to include 8-man as well. And they're allowing, so Pariah Nexus is live. The new GSC Codex is live, and the new Sisters Codex is live. So it's all three of the new releases are going to be live for ATC this year.
Which one?
Yeah, well, I mean,
very exciting.
That's 3 weeks, right? Like all that drops like 3 weeks before the event, right?
It is,
yeah,
but they had to amend their cutoff date because all the it was off by maybe like 1 day. So people are like, oh, how are you going to rule it? So they decided to go with all the new stuff.
So what are we doing? The 5-man or the 8-man?
I want to do the 5-man. Oh, I think I was cleaning out my chats, by the way, Nick. I think I dropped the group. I didn't mean to, just to let you know. I was looking for it this morning. Anyways, send me an invite if you guys are still doing that. If not, don't worry about it. But anyways, you guys, I'll let you guys answer this. Maxwell has a question for us.
I don't know. I haven't really seen any of the rules on it. It could make it more complex. It could make it more simple.
I'll read the question. How do you guys think Pariah Nexus will refresh the competitive game? Will it increase in complexity? Will this increase learning curve?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it'll increase learning curve for new people because they'll just be learning Nexus instead of Leviathan. It'll be a little bit of learning for people who came in on Leviathan and really that's all they know. People from older editions, I don't think will have that much issue adapting to a new slight mission change.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a minor. I think it's going to be relatively minor. I'm not expecting them to do sweeping changes. The game is actually in a really good place right now. Mm-hmm. The competitive balance is excellent. The secondary deck is really good. Everything we've seen so far is basically minor. It's minor improvements, and then there some of the other stuff involves minor improvements to battle line, right? Because there's a concern that certain armies may want to take 0 battle line, and it seems a little. I think maybe GW doesn't like that sort of design space where the battle line just isn't present at all. So kind of the nuts and bolts, right? Like your space, your tactical marines, your intercessors, your maybe whatever acolytes. There's so many examples. Corn berserkers.
So that might be the major change. A lot of armies will have to drop one of their other units to take 1 or 2 more battle line.
I agree.
Yeah, and I still think this is minor though. So even though there's like these improvements being made, I think they're going to continue down the same sort of path where you won't have any issue. It'll be like a nice little refresh to the game, but a lot of the stuff like should stay the same.
Yeah, like 80-90% of your strategy can stay the same. Just have a couple new secondaries probably to play within. The missions objectives will move slightly to different spots and maybe some slight different, but for the most part, the game will stay the same.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be adjacent to, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's just going to change.
Right.
Adjacent to, so a little bit of tweaks and things like that. I know they already stated like 6 of the missions are already going to stay the same way, or 6 of the secondaries, are going to stay the same. So you're going to see a lot of the old stuff in there, maybe a little bit of the twist, things like that. But
they're They're going to keep investigate signals and capture enemy outpost.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to increase the learning curve either. I think it's just going to be something new and fresh and new to learn, right? And and stay tuned, right? We're going to talk about that here in the future about Pariah Nexus. We're going to have multiple episodes on that, so stay tuned. So Jody, hopefully I'm saying it right? Jody, what if you're playing Space Wolves and the reason for all of your units is to charge the enemy and kill things? Yeah, of course. I mean,
Well, if they don't have
you don't-
models, they can't score points.
Exactly. Yeah. And if your goal is to kill things, then kill things. You know what I'm saying? That is still the goal of playing 40K, right? You want to kill things. We just want to make sure that people understand that it's not the only goal, right? You shouldn't just always go for the head hunt. I understand a lot of people have that previous edition mentality from old ITC, things like that.
Well, I want to
Where kill one, kill more, hold one, hold more, things like that.
I want to
But
answer this one because I think this is a little bit of a loaded question, but I have a good answer for this. So he's saying if you're playing Space Wolves, he's basically saying like, what if you're playing Space Wolves? Like, how are you winning the game? Like, are you killing them? Well, two
I
things.
think he was just being funny, saying,
yeah,
the Space
Well,
Wolves, you don't play
yeah.
the game, you just try to kill stuff.
Let's move.
Yeah.
I guess let's
Yeah.
move on.
yeah.
Yeah, because obviously, if you're playing wolves, like when I play my wolves, you take some small units to sit back and hold objectives. Not every unit's designed to kill things if you're building the list. But in lore, if you're a
That's more
Space
of a
Wolf
fluff.
player,
That's more of a fluff thing.
no unit's going to want to sit back. You're just charging with everybody. So
Exactly.
if you can kill them all, if you can kill their whole army in the first 3 turns, you can still win doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you're stopping them from doing stuff, right? Yeah, of course.
So
if you put them in wolf jail, they can't get any points.
Yeah, something I wanted to talk about here. So number 4 has to do with the time aspect of it. So this is actually one of the main reasons that I hear people say that they don't want to go to tournaments or events or whatever is because of the time constraints. It is difficult. I mean, it can be difficult when you start off, right? Once you play, if you played 5 or 10 games or more, you get used to you adapt to this and get used to this very quickly. And then some of the tips I can give with the time constraints, basically you have a 3-hour round. You can think of it in a way.
Most of the time.
Yeah, generally it's a 3-hour round. When you're playing 2,000 points, it could also be 2.5 hours. But generally a good way to think about it is both players get about an hour 30 to play their game. And keep in mind the first 3 rounds are where the majority of the game takes place. Usually by 4 and 5, the game is winding down, and occasionally you can play round 5 very quickly in like less than 5 minutes. If someone has already won, their army's been destroyed, they have almost no units left, they're battle shocked. There's all these things that happen in the end game state commonly where it's easy to figure out how the game is resolved. Something you want to. So if you're new, if you're getting into competitive, if you're not sure about time, it harps on the stuff that we already talked about. You want to have the plan for deploying your army. You want to deploy your army quickly. I would recommend to not take more than 15 minutes to deploy your army as well. You want to get through that deployment phase. If you can do it in less than 10 minutes, I would say that's great. You want to have all of your stuff deployed, ready to roll for the first turn within 10 minutes. That's ideal because generally you're going to have more fun. You'll have a better conclusion to the game. The game itself will probably be better and more enjoyable for both players. The faster that things progress into that first turn roll off. You don't want to spend 30 minutes just talking about how busted Necrons are and how much you hate the new orc detachment. Definitely, you don't want to get hung up on that early game. If you're in the middle of the game, it's better. It might be better to talk about that, right? Because things are progressing, people are rolling dice. Try not to get hung up early game. Get your stuff deployed quickly, and then be concise about your setup.
Yeah, and start planning your next turn during your opponent's turn. While they're doing stuff, be figuring out what you want to do, and when you get to your turn, be decisive. Don't have paralysis by analysis. Don't sit there, get in your own head, and just have too many options where you can't pick one.
Yeah, and something else I want to touch on with this is that there's an element of time parity with the battle round. So the rule, like as it says here, is if there's 10 minutes left in the battle round, basically meaning the round is not the battle round, but the
Tournament
round.
round.
Yeah, the tournament round is almost over. It's do not start a new round because one person would take their turn and then the other person would not take a turn. So, for example, player one might take their third turn, and then player two would not get the opportunity to take their third turn, meaning someone got a whole extra turn, which is just it should never happen. Basically, never a game should never freeze in the middle of a battle round. It should essentially always conclude the battle round. So you have to just be if you do get in a slog game that's taking a long time, that's grinding out, you just want to be aware if you're going first or going second, and talk to your opponent, make them aware that time is an issue, and try to figure out where it's going to end before you have 5 minutes left and and then everyone starts flipping out. So.
You should really be doing that at the beginning of the game, like especially usually if not 9 out of 10 times, 10 out of 10 times, and when I play 40K tournaments, right? When I talk to people on the table and it's their turn, I'm letting them know, right? And I'm not pesterizing them, or I'm not trying to annoy them or dictate anything, right? I just want to let them know that, hey, at the beginning of this game, it usually takes 5 minutes for us to kind of talk over what we need to talk over for our respective armies, right? 10 minutes each to deploy our armies. And then we should be jumping into our first battle round, right? Exactly. That should only take 20 minutes each, right? So now you're at 60, 70 minutes to an hour and 10 minutes between the first battle round and everything else, right? So by that time, we should be in battle round 2, if not sooner, already setting this up properly, and then having an equal amount of time to play out the game, right? Like, things go very fast. We understand individuals like myself who plays a semi-horde army, 90 models or so. I wouldn't call that a complete horde army. I would consider maybe 130, 120 models more of a horde army. But it's still a lot of models, right? The point being, it's still a lot of models. And you kind of want to talk about that, right? If you ever look at my player packets actually break down every player turn's time allotment. And I got that from Games Workshop. Even though Games Workshop does not restrict in their opens how long their game should be, right? Obviously, they don't want you playing an 8-hour game, but they do not state that you can use a clock, and they usually don't state that you have 3 hours in your round. They try to get you within those parameters, right? By letting you know that this might be the amount of time to play. Usually they give you enough time to finish out your games, especially if it's for podium, right? Positioning and stuff like that. Also, I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about this too, because it's pretty contentious, right? And I have my opinions on this. I know other people have their opinions on this. I'll be honest with you. I think my opinion is not that it's the right or the wrong way, but I think that it's because it could be the wrong way too, right? I think so, very much so. But I think that what can be very contentious, talking about the 10 minutes left in the game, is that a lot of people want to weaponize either the clock or the amount of time that's remaining in the game, and kind of stop it at a point where they're making sure that they win, right? And I believe that at any point in time that you use the clock and weaponize it for your benefit, right? This can be a contentious situation. Now, let me explain to you what I do, right? Basically, how I break it down is, at around 20 minutes, I'll start talking to my opponent. Matter of fact, a lot earlier than that, like I stated right at the beginning of the game. But about 20 to 40 minutes prior to that, depending what battle round we're in. Like, if we're in the 4th battle round and I know we're going to be able to get into the 5th battle round and play that out, I usually don't talk about it, right? But if we're in the 2nd or 3rd battle round and I know we won't complete the game out, I'll start asking my opponent, like, hey, we only had a limited amount of time. I probably won't get my turn. How do you kind of want to play this out? Do you kind of want to talk it out? I actually did that at an event that I went to a month ago, and I ended up losing. I did not take that at the slightest in the wrong way, because we only ended up playing 2 or 3 battle rounds, and we left basically on his battle round. I was winning if we would have done like dice down exactly at the time and things like that. I kind of wanted to talk it out. We still rolled dice all the way into the end and trying to figure it out, and I ended up losing. Now, I don't want to put anybody in the spot, but I'm just letting everybody know, right? Like, that's one of those things, first of all, as an individual and my morality and my pride, right? At the end of the day, this is still a fun game, right? Either win or lose. Second, it is not always about the win. That is not why I play the game. The winning is tertiary to everything else than why I play the game. First of all, if I'm playing a game against Nick, it's because I want to have a pleasant, great game against Nick. I want to be able to learn Nick's CSM army, or I want to play against Matt's Space Wolf army and have a great time learning his army. Win
Oh
or
yeah,
lose,
100%.
right? But I've seen some people, right? Like I've literally had to yellow card and take people to the side and tell them I've had to uh, take people out of events and let them know that priority is not only about winning the game. We understand it's very important, right? But it's not everything that you have to live life for, right? It's a game at the end of the day. And if you weren't winning already at that point in time, where the time is going down, or you weren't cognizant of things, then that just means that in the future, you just need to be more aware of how to time manage a lot better, right? How to kind of talk and communicate with your opponents a lot better so they can time manage with you at the same time and they understand, right? And I did this over the weekend and I did this to all three of my opponents and I had no resistance whatsoever. They were aware of exactly what I was talking about because of my delivery system, right? The way that I was talking to them, right? I was like, hey, man, you know, I might not get a chance to do my turn. That's fine. Let's just kind of finish it out, kind of talk it out and figure it out, roll some dice, whatever we need to do. And like I said, it's very contentious, but I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about it, maybe get Matt and Nick's opinions on this.
Yeah. Well, I'd say if you notice the first turn or two, your opponent's kind of a slow player, I'd say something to them because the game is designed to be 5 rounds, and some armies just naturally score quicker than others. So if you only get 2 or 3 rounds in, that really favors some armies over others. And I don't think someone who plays their army efficiently should be punished because their opponent takes 2 hours out of a 3-hour game. And when it comes to talking out, I'm like on the fence because a lot of people are against it because a lot of times when people talk stuff out, they give each other both more than they actually probably would have gotten if they played it out, and they both end up with more points. And that could affect pairings and placings and stuff going forward. So say you would have won 80 to 70, but you guys talking it out. Well, I might get this. Well, I'll give you that if you give me this. And now you end up winning 90 to 80. Well, now you both have 10 more points than you would have if you'd actually played the game out correctly.
Yeah, no, I could definitely touch on this too. So I mean, basically, what we're saying is, it's communicate effectively,
Mhm.
right? So you want to try to be on the same page, make sure you understand like how the scoring is happening, how the rules are interacting, and so and when the game is going to end. Is the game going to end at the bottom of 4? Is the game going to end at the bottom of 5? It shouldn't be a gotcha. You know, when the game's going to end, it should be a gotcha that you're going to score 15 points on a secondary or 12 points or however many. You know, it's open in. After all, this is an open information game. You know, we're here to enjoy ourselves, and a big part of that is you have to share that experience with your opponent, right? You share it, you share the enjoyment. You're playing the game together. You're not playing against them, if that makes sense.
Playing with them, not against them. It does. Perfect sense. Thank you for that. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, no, I just kind of wanted to touch on that. I think that's something that a lot of people just don't put it into account, right? Going into a tournament, as if we're talking about a tournament setting, right? And going to tournaments and setting things up. Just try to be as friendly as possible. Try to do what you need to do and have a great time, right? Like you don't, like Matt said, you don't need to talk out all the battle rounds, but maybe you talk out one battle round, right? Maybe you only got to battle round 2. You didn't have the opportunity to play your bottom of 2, right? And you say, hey, man, do you mind if I talk it out because you had 1,000 orcs on the board. It took you 2 hours to do what you needed to do, right? And I hate to use orcs as an example, but that's what I play because I don't want to talk negatively about orcs and then have people just always using clocks on orcs. But just be aware, right? And communicate effectively, just like Nick said, right? Communicate effectively, and if you're communicating with your opponent and letting them know, hey, you have 20 minutes for this battle round. Hey, by the way, you've went over your allotment of 20 minutes by 20 minutes, right? How is that going to affect me? So go ahead, Nick.
Oh, I want to give an example too. So this is maybe kind of a strange example, but a situation where you wouldn't want to talk it out is when there's too many variables. And what I'm talking about is not things that are generally not variables in Warhammer are movement, right? So movement and setting up reserves and setting up deep strikes. None of that is a variable, right? Because things have a set characteristic, and your opponent can't affect your movement generally. You know, at 99% of the time, you can just move and that's it. There's no dice rolling, if that makes sense. So it's not variable. It's easy to talk that out. Another thing that is easy to talk out would be like, hey, let's draw my 2 cards and see what I drew, right? Because that's also not, there's no variable involved. You're not rolling a dice or anything. A situation that could arise where you couldn't talk the game out, or you wouldn't, or players like maybe should hold back from talking out, would be a situation that has a lot of variance. An example of this would be like a Custodes versus Custodes mirror match. I don't know why this game would go to time because both players only have 22 models on the table.
Exactly.
But let's just say that like this was both players' first tournament ever, and they were learning the rules, and they were, you know, they're shooting the shit, having a good time. In a Custodes mirror match, I would highly recommend to not talk out battle rounds because every model has a 4-up invulnerable save, and you never really know if you're going to take damage or not from anything that's happening. So it'd be, you know, and then it's like, well, do I make this charge? Does my, you know, is my laser Telemon Dreadnought going to connect with his laser cannon? There's all these random variables, and I think it might be very difficult in a close game or in a like a stagnant game. It makes it very, very difficult to see like what might die because it's an army that specializes in not dying. So
yeah, and if you're coming
Great
to
point.
an event and you're running 200 Gene Stealer Cult, 200 Orcs, something like that, make sure you know your rules so that you're not taking all this time to move everything.
the endless swarm.
And then each time you got to shoot with a unit, you got to look up their gun. Each time they shoot you, you got to look up your toughness and say, like, no, if you're bringing that many models, know your rules and be decisive in your decisions. Otherwise, you know, especially if you're newer, because I know winning isn't everything, but we all come there to be competitive and to try to win games. So if you only get 2 rounds in and lose a game that you know you probably would have won, that's a feel bad for a experienced player against a newer player.
So okay, so that's, you guys know what these are. So that's another one. So if you're playing this like endless swarm or this green tide, there's all these horde armies are like coming back now. I'm surprised that they brought them back, but here they are. I mean, I'm not saying you need to have these, but you need to like conceptualize this. So if you're setting up these 20 model units, you're basically when you start to move, you're gonna measure the front guy like 6 inches or whatever it is, and then just shove it.
Because if you're
like, please don't be that guy who's out here like, oh yeah, here we go, boop, boop, boop. Please don't do that.
Yeah, because it's your responsibility to be able to play your army in your allotted time, so that you guys can get 5 rounds in most of the time, but at least 4. If you're not getting 4 rounds in consistently, you really need to go back to assess how you play your army and how well you know your rules.
That's right. Unless you're having too much fun. Like I've lost games because I've just, like Nick said, right, I'm just shooting the shit with my opponent and we're having so much fun. I'm like, I lost it by 3 points. Who cares? I'm like, look, I had such a blast with you. I'm putting you in as best sport, right?
We're not talking about you bottom table players, Lewis. We're talking about people who are actually trying to do well.
All of my favorite games, easily, like hands down. I've like this edition's only been out for a year. I've played like all the best 40K. I've had like all my favorite matches have been in the last year, and every single game has been, I think, either a 1-point game or a 3-point game. And I can give you probably like 10 examples, all extremely close games. Win or lose. Some of them were losses, you know.
Yeah, I think all of 10th edition, I think I've only had 1 game at an event that didn't go 5 rounds. Like it's not that hard in 10th edition. Everything is a lot simpler.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you feel, Nick? We knocked it out of the park. This page right here. Everything's good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. We can move on to the next one.
All right. So what? Before we move on to the next one, and Matt takes the dance floor, we are going to pay the bills one more time with a wonderful sponsor. Love this gentleman, known him for many years. And we'll be right back.
Turn this into an epic display.
Hey everyone, I'm Lee the 40K Nomad, and this is my battle board in a box. The only display board you are ever going to need, and it will take care of all your armies. Let's open this thing up and show you how it works.
And then choose from the steps or the flat wall section. All display boards come with both options. Want to use the same display for a second or third army? No problem. Change out the picture, change out the insert, add some different terrain, and you're good to go.
Love that guy, by the way.
Oh yeah, Lee's great.
Wonderful individual. Also, if you haven't noticed already, excuse me, on the YouTube description section, he is doing actually $50 off on those battle boards. So please go make sure and check him out. Check out his website. You put in OCS 50, and you get $50 off your first battle board. So go check that out. They're wonderful. Let me zoom out just slightly. If you can see to my right over here, I have some sitting right here. I'm going to be bringing this to the GT, and you'll see it at Crucible as well.
Sweet.
So get prepared for that. So Matt's going to take the final page. I think he has some great insight, some things to break down the end of it all, and take us home, baby. Come on, Matt.
Yeah, so this is basically a rundown of everything we've already went through. So make sure to read all the pertinent information about the tournament, missions, deployments, times, and just all that stuff to help you know what you're getting into before you show up. Create your army list, design it towards the missions, know what each unit you're putting in is supposed to do, and then save it from whatever app you're making it on and submit it onto the BCP app in the player details. Plan your deployment.
That was important, by the way, that you said, right? And if you don't mind expanding on that a little bit, since you brought that up, right? Plan your deployments out, right? And I think that's a great topic for you to kind of finish on.
Yeah, so like I said, if you have a opportunity to know the deployment and terrain and missions, practice, because you want to have a general idea of how your army deploys. You can tweak it slightly depending on certain matchups and how your opponent deploys. But you want to know, like when I played Votan, I'd always deploy the 3 bike units first because they got a pregame move. So I'd always put them down, knowing they're not going to be here, just to try to see what the opponent does. And when I start deploying the rest of the army, leave holes to the left and the right of those units for them to jump back safely depending on what your opponent does. So don't put them out thinking, all right, I'm going to move them after, and then deploy the rest of your army where they have nowhere to move. Just little stuff like that. And then know where you want to go turn 1, where you want to go turn 2, possibly in certain matchups where you want to even be turn 3. So like have an idea of where you're starting, where you're going, and how you're planning on getting there.
How would you do that with like Wolf Jail, right? Break it down to a little bit to the people, if you don't mind, Matt. How would you set up Wolf Jail in your mind for like battle rounds 1 and 2, and potentially 3?
All right. Well, depending on the deployment and the terrain stuff, but a lot of times what you want to do with the Thunderwolf units is push them hard to the opponent's side of the board and kind of pin them in and make them deal with them before they can get middle and start scoring. So basically when you look at, all right, what avenues does my opponent have on his side that he's going to be trying moving through, and what is the quickest and easiest way for me to get my units to block those avenues? and then so just set up so that you can hopefully get there in the first turn or two and kind of hold him back, so that even if he eventually digs through, hopefully your little trash units have been scoring the middle because nothing's been able to get out there really and contest them.
Yeah, and it matters because it's actually a little bit, it's good, but it's a little bit played out too, because the wolves are on 60 mil bases and they can't move through walls. So like if you look at the board, you're like, well, they can't stage in this ruin. They have to go around the ruin. So what their lane of attack is. It's like
Yep.
it's kind of like it's like a who let the dogs out situation. They're just gonna run down the alley right at you.
Yep. And I've sprinkled in my version a couple squads of Outriders, because with their auto advance and stuff, they're really useful to also kind of do. They're not as durable and don't put out as much damage, but they can also block up a few of the lanes to help the wolves.
Yeah, move blocking. So yeah, because the wolf jail will definitely move block you. So if you can move block them, I mean, it's even better.
Well, that's why it's called that, right? Why is it called wolf jail? I mean, I know, but I want the people to know, right?
Yeah, because you're trying to lock your opponent onto their side of the table for as long as you can.
Right. It involves the movement. It involves the movement phase. So wolf jail is Space Marines after all, so it's very versatile. But it's not a damage dealing army. It's just it's a movement based army, right? It's a control. Think of it as it's like a control deck in Magic.
Yeah. But the wolves can do damage to a lot of stuff, so they don't completely sleep on their ability to deal damage when they get there.
I think they deal. They definitely kill infantry, but they don't really kill vehicles. So
I've had pretty good.
They whooped up on demons. Matt was telling me the other day.
Oh, nice. They're reasonable.
They're +1 damage on the charge. If you put the strat on, that gives them lance and stuff for +1 to wound.
Yeah, like, the army wide reroll.
If you put the lieutenant in there, they get lethal hit. Like they can get pretty. And they get so many attacks. It's like 4 from the wolf, 3 from the guy, something like that. It's like 7-8 attacks per model.
They definitely deal damage. Yeah, I mean, just not huge damage, but like moderate damage.
Yes, but for as durable they are, they did put out a decent amount of damage.
Yeah, it's a really difficult thing to play against. I don't think anyone over here is playing the wolf jail. I haven't seen it in Florida.
Kurt's got it. We'll see if he starts showing up to some events.
Yeah, but like I said, by the time people actually play, it's going to be nerfed.
I don't know. They've been going light on Space Marines. They haven't really hit Space Marines any nerfs.
Well, hopefully. I mean, I hope, right? Like that's. Yeah. I was thinking that they were going to do a lot more to the Orcs FAQ, and they didn't. People were saying, they were going to nerf some stratagems and stuff, and they didn't. So, I mean, you might have a great point. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to see it. I don't think it's that bad. I'll be honest with you guys, right? And I'm not. I mean, I sometimes, 99% of the time I don't, but is that 0.1% of the time, or that 1% of the time, well, I'll knee jerk and have that knee jerk reaction and things. But most of the time, it's usually because something is fresh and new, right? It's not necessarily broken. It's not like Harlequins in 9th edition or Speed Freaks in 8th edition or 9th edition, whatever it was, when basically Matt created a meme of me where he was like, you destroyed your army while everybody was still in the deployment phase. Like, those were hard times, right? Matt, and then Matt took Harlequins, never played the entire army ever, not one time in his life, went into a GT and went like 4-1.
Yeah, my only loss was another Harlequin player who won the whole event, and I had one practice game with the army. Like they were stupid broken.
Well, there's few armies in that level of damage, like killing someone in the deployment phase, I guess. Yeah. But there's few armies out there right now in this edition that have that level of damage. It still exists. Like I know the Thousand Suns can do it. There's a couple out there that are really scary. But generally, even for like some of these boogeyman armies like Tau and Orcs and some of the other ones, like they're still going to play 4 or 5 rounds. It's not going to be a turn 1 kill scenario.
Yeah, that Speed Freaks just did that into night. It was just
that was oh gosh.
that was fun.
Oh, no.
I enjoyed it.
We got a question from Maxwell. So he says,
Hold
how
on
are you
one
guys?
second. There we go.
How basically are you guys changing your list to cope with hordes coming back? So yeah, in general, you're looking for like volume of dice. So that could be things that just have a high innate attack characteristic. So that would be kind of like first base marines, chain swords, assault cannons have 6 shots. There's some guns that have like 8 shots. Stuff like generic-y stuff like storm bolters at rapid
Yeah.
fire with 4 shots. So you're just looking to roll a lot of dice. That's generally what's going to kill the hordes.
Yeah, my list I was
Redeemers are back, baby. Redeemers are back.
yeah.
Redeemer. Well, which
The
Redeemer?
Land Raider Flamer.
Oh my gosh!
Land
No,
Raider.
that's not that's killing everything. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not just killing hordes.
But no,
But
my
it makes
list
life so
actually
much
isn't
easier.
changing because I
Yeah.
think the list I'm running does well into Horde. But that's because up here where I'm at, there was a lot of Gene Stealer Cult and Horde Necrons
Yeah.
going on before, so I was already dealing with a little of that before.
Yeah, I'll wait to see how GSC comes out to be. Right, there's been some leaks as of lately, but we still don't know what the meta is going to look like for GSC. Depends on what they have and what we want to use to basically take away their effectiveness.
Yep.
For orcs, I mean, I guess you can tech into some stuff like Green Tide right now, but it's like Nick said, I just take more attacks, right?
Yeah,
and pray to the dice gods.
there's an interesting meta consideration there that I want to expand on as well. If you look at orcs, if you look at the armies that are the really good horde armies, you got your Tyranids Endless Swarm, and then you've got like your orcs Green Tide, right? So
yeah.
there's an interesting thing going on there because if you play a mirror match, like let's say that you're playing all the gaunts, you're playing the gaunt carpet, which is the what's it called, Tyranid Endless Swarm, and then you go up against like your Synaptic Nexus or your Invasion Fleet, right? Your standard Tyranids that you'd expect to see. The Horde army in the mirror match has an innate advantage. It has a scoring advantage, a boo blocking advantage, and it plays a better long game. So it's hard to explain why that happens, but that's just the reality of it. Generally, your Horde list is preferred in the mirror match, and that same concept of the Horde beating the maybe more elite or more balanced list applies to orcs as well, where in an orc mirror match, the Green Tide has an advantage. It is advantage to score more and play a longer game. So it's something to consider. Just if you like to plan for a mirror match, if you're worried about playing mirror match potentially, or if you're considering getting into playing a horde army, that's one of the there's a lot of advantages and disadvantages, but that's one of the advantages that you might get from playing a horde army.
Sure, indeed. I agree. Take us home, Matt.
All right, and then that was deployment, and then once Battle Round 1 begins, you'll have more fun executing your strategy, rolling dice, and actually playing Warhammer. Don't get caught up with pre-game distractions. Yeah, so just get through your deployment, have a plan for it, and just get on to play in Warhammer.
Mm-hmm.
And then play the game, not the army. So yeah, the point isn't to kill everything your opponent has. The point is to have more points in them. So while you may have to change your strategy slightly based on the army you're playing, you should be assessing the game on how to score your points, not necessarily on how to defeat the other army.
And to be worried about like your units dying, like because they have so much special attachment, or you have a special attachment to a certain unit because you painted it or whatever it might be, right? Yeah. So hey, some people like that. People play like that. Seriously.
If you kill Ragnar, we're fighting, okay? Like,
well, what I like to do is
outside, out of the event.
after, yep.
just find their best look their army over for a minute, find their best painted model, and then just make sure you kill that first. That's it works. It works every time.
Worse than that, find the one that looks like they just built last night that they just bought.
Exactly.
Nothing's worse than the unit you haven't even got to try out yet dying early.
Yes,
it's always double ones on the charge.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. And then obviously play for the win, like, but play for fun as well. Like, don't, you know, just play for the win. But obviously, if you're coming to a tournament, the goal is to win and see how well you can do with what you brought. But if you're losing or find yourself in a situation where it looks like you're going to lose, you're still there to have fun. You're still not at work. You're still not at home with the wife and
Exactly.
kid. You know, like, still enjoy the experience even if you lose, but do your best to try to win.
Exactly. I mean, I hate the term casual play, right? Like, and I know hate's a strong word, but I hate that term. I really do,
Mhm.
because there is no such thing as casual play in 40K. There really isn't. You
Well,
cannot you cannot play 40K today and jump into it a year from now. That is, the rules are completely different, as you know, right? As we know, Pariah Nexus is coming out, so you can't be playing Leviathan missions, come back a year later and it's in Pariah Nexus, and then you're like, oh, I'm just gonna casually play. No, it's kind of a different game, and the aspect of what. Go ahead, Matt.
yeah, so yeah, you can't casually play in an event, but if you and I are getting drunk in your garage, we can casually play.
I would say that's more of a narrative, right? Like, I would play more into a narrative setting.
But it
Right?
depends. If we don't set up a narrative, it's just, hey, let's just kill each other. We can casually just freaking.
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, yeah. But then you still got to know the newer rules, unless you're going to remember the rules from a year ago and just play with that, right? And I see people do it all the time. I see people who don't even want to play 10th edition, and they're like, "Well, we're just going to continue to play 8th edition because that was my favorite edition." Yeah, then yes, in that sense, that is casual play because you're playing the same thing.
But at
You
an
never have
event,
to change.
there's no such thing as casual play.
Nah, it's a competitive game. Ultimately, the goal is to win, right? But the biggest thing is most important thing, right, is to play and have fun.
And
I want to play with my buds, hang out with my buds, and hopefully not match up with my friends that I literally drove 2 hours with and match up against them round one.
But yeah, I think a lot of times people take competitive and turn it into contentious. You're here to play competitive. You're not here to be contentious.
That's right.
Yeah, and
That's
it's really not, and I can speak to that as well with this. The question is exactly what we're talking about here. So he's Max is asking, what's the proper etiquette on conceding when it's a curb stomp mismatch? So this happens. The proper etiquette. This has happened. I've seen it happen a million times. What you want to do in this situation, if things don't go your way, you know your opponent has an advantage. They're going to win the game. Don't get salty. Don't start talking about how your dice were so bad and all of this stuff. That's not really the takeaway from the game. Think of it as like a learning experience. Think of it like a learning experience, right? Because a lot of times, like you might have lost because you weren't familiar with their army. You might have lost because like they're extremely experienced, and they have 50 reps with that army, and you might have lost. Maybe they're just a better player than you, right? There's all these reasons for winning and losing 40K. Take it as a learning experience. Lose graciously, I think, and have good etiquette. Obviously, if you're winning as well, you don't want to.
Yeah.
There's nothing you need to rub in your face. At the end of the day, it's just a game. People are trying to enjoy themselves. So it's not a.
Yeah. And what
It's
I
not
do when
not playing against your opponent, playing with them.
Yeah, and what I do when I find myself in a game, like, all right, there's no way I can win this, I set myself a new goal. I'm like, all right, that one character there, he's dying before I leave. So you're playing to still win the game. Me, I'm playing to kill that freaking character or kill that freaking tank.
Exactly. I do
find
this as well.
something to try to achieve in the last. So I'm not just here playing the game. I have something. I'm not trying to win the game anymore. I'm trying to achieve something that is a moral victory to me. Like, at least that fucker didn't live.
Exactly.
I love it.
Exactly, and that's
Ragnar,
a big.
Battle round one.
That's a big strength of Warhammer too, because like there's a lot of randomization, there's a lot of dice happening, so it's like you could really have that like epic showdown, like character v character, and then what if it's like, what if Ragnar makes all of his invuln saves, like he's gonna do it all over again on the next turn. So they're like, it's still, even if you're gonna lose, like there's still a level of enjoyment and learning and communication that happens, and regardless of the outcome of the game.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're in a situation where you have 2 models left hiding behind a building and you're just complete. I mean, just play it out and just know that happens sometimes. Just
you can actually ask. You can ask
Go
your
ahead.
opponent, what could I have done better? That's actually a
That too.
very, because that lets them know. That's actually that's the one thing you can say that will let them know that you're on the same page with them, like with what's happening, and you're not getting salty, you're not complaining. Ask them. You can ask them during the game, if you want to. If you feel comfortable enough doing that, you could ask them, what could I have done better? How could I have done better? Because
There you go.
almost everyone will give you some sort of valid
Yep.
response. And
Yeah.
if they're being a good opponent, they shouldn't. They and if you're asked this question during a game, I wouldn't blow them off and write them off and just not answer the question. I would give them some valid answer. I think it shows a good high level of sportsmanship.
Correct.
And it shows a very high good level of game etiquette. Every good player will answer that question.
I'm just better than you, Nick. That's why I beat you.
Well,
Get
No,
good, noob.
I'm saying like that's what a dick would say, right? Like, I'd be like, I'm just better than you.
Well,
I
you could have not brought a
speaking-
trash list. Oh,
Exactly. And speaking of asses, why you got to do people like this, Nick?
oh man, I don't even.
Getting bad touched by Nick's World Eaters
Those-
was rough.
Ooh, that was like the November. That was the November World Eaters. Before that was the old Master of Execution. That was like the 40 damage Master of Execution. Yeah, that was a rough time. Angron.
What up, Carmelo? Carmelo says just draw the character with 200 Tyranids.
Yeah, oh man, Tyranids.
Oh my gosh.
Ragnar's got this.
Yeah. He used to have it when he had the index. I'm still crying and complaining. I'm forever gonna cry and complain about
The COVID index
Space
was
Wolves.
gross.
It was the best, man. It was the best Space Wolves. I wish they would have never touched it. Their codex better be just like that, if not better. Ragnar better have like a special Ryu, a Dukin roundhouse kicking type of special ability like he used to have, right? I miss those Space Wolves so much. So thank you as always. Unless Nick and Matt has something to expand on. Love you, Matt. Almost Functional. Make sure to go check it out. The link is right below, right on the banner, the scrolling banner below. Almost Functional. Go check that out. I know he's going to have some wonderful content for you very soon. As always, thank you very much, Nick. I know you work hard. You came on, jumped on the show right after work. Love you, brother. You are the man.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much. And I have put in this PDF and the video for how to register for Best Coast Pairings for BCP in the YouTube link and on Twitch, of course, right? Make sure to download that if you need the information. Here's a resource page as well. The resource page gives you just about all the information for everything. It gives you the Google Drive. It gives you the Best Coast Pairings, Games Workshop application for both Android and Apple. And I was nice enough to give you 39K.pro as well, so you can get all the information on all of the armies that you're going to play against at your event. All right? Enjoy, everyone. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. See you guys next time on OCS 11. We're going to have something special in store for you all. We're going to have that Traveler's Guide, and we're going to expand on what we talked on today. So make sure to stay tuned.
Yeah,
Take
guys,
care.
have fun at Grand Onslaught too.
Oh!
Oh!
Incredible Hulk me. Bye, everybody.
Nice.